All right, we will call the meeting to order for February 9th, Public Library Board meeting. First, we're going to skip over a couple items. We'll go back and want to start with the appointment to fill the remainder of Magnolia Rivera Felix's term as library trustee. Could I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
All right. All in favor of Mary filling in the remainder of Magnolia's term, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Therefore, we passed that. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Board member. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now to make it really official, the clerk will swear you in.
I'll stay right here. I will stand though.
Right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
Mary Petruha,
having been appointed to the office of library trustee
having been appointed to the office of Skokie Library Trustee,
in the village of Skokie,
Village of Skokie,
in the county of
County of Cook,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Skokie Library Trustee
faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Skokie Library Trustee. Is that right? Okay.
according to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. You want me to speak to you?
Sure. Sometimes.
I think we can go through that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. To you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. You can start.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Susie.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good meeting now.
Thank you. We'll do that.
Have a great evening.
All right, back to the original agenda, comments from observers.
No, there are no comments.
Observers here will move on. Approval of the minutes for the regular and closed meetings of January 12th. Question regarding the minutes of either the open or closed meeting. Now can I have a motion for?
So moved.
Second? Someone?
Second.
All right, let's, no discussion, let's just do it together. Approving both the open and closed meetings, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. Now we will move on to director's report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Congratulations again, Mary. We're happy to have you on board here. Actually, there's not much that I want to get into further than what I have in the director's report. The master plan, Andrew Berman will discuss. Project Tom Hutchinson will discuss that later this evening. And the other items here are pretty self-explanatory. There's one thing here that I wanted to get the board's feedback on, and that is scheduling an EDI workshop for the board. So if you recall, I believe it was last month, there was a comment about whether or not there could be some training for the board. And I contacted one of our consultants that has worked with us in the past on and staff training, Rena Campbell. She's a local consultant and trainer, and she expressed enthusiasm for working with us. And she has a lot of experience working with boards. Like maybe she could tailor something related to EDI in the context of board work. So I was hoping that would be okay with the board. If there are other suggestions on specific topics, or please.
You know I do.
Please go ahead.
I would love for the board to take a trip to see a site of struggle at the Block Museum. I think that that exhibition and the opportunity for us all to have a discussion around the artist's interpretation and that historical span would be useful in terms of setting a context for us all that a communal context, as opposed to our individual experience.
I like that idea. I'm always up for a field trip and we can help kind of coordinate the schedule and everything, but questions or ideas or?
Great idea.
We just have to figure out a way to coordinate the schedules and also I have to check with the attorney to see if it has to be considered a public board meeting at a remote location. And if it is, that should be fine, but we just have to call this.
And they've done the material, so there's a guide that we can use as our guide, opposed to, I hate paying consultants, so.
By which we all agree we will go view it, whether funds,
That's no
Yeah.
problem.
And I'll volunteer to go if anybody wants to go. It's there till July, so we have lots of time. If you want to go, we'll make a party. I'll get you drinking yet, Michelle.
We can certainly coordinate that. Susan and I can work together and schedule that on. You want to do that in lieu of a separate workshop with the consultant for now, or
I would like that in addition to.
in addition to? Okay.
I think so too. I think that that's important that we still work with a consultant, especially in the realm related to us as a board. I think that's important for us to experience together.
Okay.
And as Richard had emailed us, this particular consultant, she's doing a EDI workshop, a virtual one. I believe it's for Rail,
Yes.
right on February 23rd from 1:30, I believe, till 2:30 p.m. Registered for it because for content, I think you said different than what maybe she's going to do here. So it's for further education.
And if anyone else still wants to be registered for that, please let us.
February 23rd, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m.
I can certainly work with Rena to schedule something. I guess the last question for me is just logistical here. Would you like to have something like a shorter session? By short, I mean about an hour within the context of. Would you like to have a longer session, maybe 2 hours on a separate evening, considered a special board meeting? That would have to be a separate day that we have to determine.
I'm open to either of them, depending on what Ms. Campbell, what she's thinking she wants to present and what she might typically present to board. She does do a 2-hour workshop. I'm certainly open to.
She told me that she could really work with either option.
Okay.
So.
I would prefer a second date, just
Okay.
because I think that focus-wise, I think it's nice to have that outside of what our normal business is, so that we can have our full focus on it.
That makes sense to me too. And I was thinking that because we have fairly new board members as a whole.
Also, if you're cutting it down from 2 hours to 1 hour, there can be a lot of useful content that would not be learned otherwise.
If I don't hear any objections to that, I can definitely work with Rena and get something on our calendars. I'll probably ask Susie to try to coordinate time in March or April, and we'll try to. I'm happy to field any other questions related to the director's report there.
I did want to ask kind of a question. I like how you had included that you signed up for the Calm app. I guess my question to that would be, number one, how did that kind of come about? And then I guess number two would be, how are we measuring its usage and its value that it's bringing to our staff members?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had heard about another local library using the signing up for the Calm premium employees and colleagues and admin and what they thought of the idea, and there was enthusiasm about it. There have been, a lot of conversations over the past 2 years, especially about mental health amongst that kind of support, health living and healthy mental states, for our staff. And so I knew of the Calm app before, and I never signed up for a 1 year subscription as an individual. So value of providing it for our entire staff and opening it up. That's the what, the how. In terms of evaluating the return on investment, Calm has a administrators portal, and they have all kinds of data about like who's using, not who's using it, but how many people on staff are registered, actively using it, and also they have the ability to tell us what types of content are being accessed. So like say there's content on like reducing stress or something, or like kind of physical movements or whatever that you can use to de-stress, or can take that, and we can also use that to gain insights on how better we can serve our employees. That's one aspect. There's all kinds of information on the Calm side of to justify kind of why this is important for workplaces, like just kind of better retention, or performance. Obviously, if people are doing better with mental health. Some of that is, I think, difficult to measure, and directly attribute to one thing, but over the course of time, we're hoping that we can kind of get a sense of whether or not the staff are benefiting from it.
I guess that kind of leads to my thought process is, how can we quantify, because how can we quantify that, right? Because if we don't have kind of like that baseline of where they're at versus if they're using it and we know that this is something that they need more of, or this is something that has been effective, just kind of taking some measurements, almost like a pre and a post kind of survey kind of a thing, just to quantify if it's something that's valuable and worth that,
Sure.
our return on investment
Sure.
kind of a thing.
So they do have a feature that, so when I log in, it'll ask me what my level of, stress or whatever is. You can skip it.
Yeah.
So it's not a required thing, but it does have stats in terms of that, of how engaged people are.
Yeah. Is that something that on the administrative side, are you able to view those ratings?
I didn't look that deeply. I believe so. Do you recall?
I haven't. We just started it, so we're still learning about all the metrics that they capture. But I hear your point, and we'll definitely, as we continue to explore it, we'll learn more about it on the administrative side as well.
Yeah, I just think although I love the idea and I love the intention behind it, I also don't want to just be throwing darts, right? And just not knowing is this what they're needing, and are we responding to that need in a way that is going to be productive for what our staff needs.
Absolutely, and we can see kind of the level of use. If it just it spikes in the beginning and then just drops off and no one's using it, that will be a clear indication as well. So.
Yeah.
Richard, what is the cost?
About $3,000 per year for. The grand scheme of things, it helps 164 employees with mental health.
Something board members can access.
That's a tricky question because technically, I'd love to offer it to open it up to the board, but I have to check with our lawyers, honestly, to make sure that that's not considered compensation. Have to check. So
Are there ones available for those people who don't want to download it on their phones or on their iPads?
it's accessible through a website,
Okay.
and on any laptop or desktop, phones, iPad. It's up to 5 devices, so they actually told us that are shared with their members of their household.
Oh, per username? If you
Per
share it
user,
outside.
you can download it on, or you access it on to 5 devices at a time. So, there's a lot of content for children as well, so with
Yeah.
family. That's also why it's the question of like kind of return on impacting the general well-being of the family of our employee and not
Right.
necessarily one individual. So
Right, and that's why I say, even just like a pre and a post survey of some sort,
That's a
for
good
those
idea.
people who are willing to participate in that and are interested in it and want to be able to say like, yes, I'm finding this as a benefit to myself and my family, this is how, and being able to measure like, okay, this is something that we should continue to use, or if this is something that's
Sure.
not, as valuable.
sure, we can definitely do that. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions about the director's report? Moving along, we want to start with Brian.
I just one quickie, in the promotions list, they on,
Yes.
under personnel,
Yes, and yes, correct.
the one promotion, Zainab, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Zena,
What he or she,
she was a materials handler, a shelver and materials handler.
thank you, I asked only because I think it might behoove us at where the movement is within the library and where those tracks are, so that we can more directly nurture that.
Good point.
And any other questions?
On with us? Yeah. Hi, Brian, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Welcome to the board meeting. We're live. So Brian, I know we had prior to the meeting given you some questions that you had answered, and I shared those responses with the board. So I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to begin with in terms of expanding on the information you provided, or sharing any information about just how IMRF works in general. Also, if the board has specific questions or follow-ups to that information, this is a time when ask Brian himself.
Thank you so much, and welcome, and thank you for inviting me to present all of the honored board members from the Skokie Public Library and guests. So I prepared a brief presentation about IMRF benefits in general. I believe the library has approximately 106 members currently participating in our retirement fund. So if there aren't any questions right now, if possible, I would just like to present and then answer and entertain questions afterwards, if that's okay.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I need to share my screen, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says I cannot share my screen.
Just give me a second.
Thank you.
Try now.
Absolutely. Okay. So, can everyone see my screen, please?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm actually going to go off camera while I present, simply because I tend to be somewhat animated. And I'll come back once I'm done. Give me just one moment, guys. Can everyone still see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So my presentation is geared for the library. However, the library is umbrellaed under the Village of Skokie as far as their IMRF participation, okay? So IMRF would like all of our members to know that we've continued operations throughout the pandemic. We're still providing all of our key services to members and employers. We're pivoting our staff between in-person and remote work environments. So I just want to clarify again, that we have not stopped supplying benefits to our members or employers throughout this entire pandemic. So our topics of the day will include a brief introduction to IMRF, understanding your benefits, how your pension is calculated, and I'll briefly describe our optional pre-retirement savings plan, the voluntary additional contributions program. Please let me know if I'm moving too fast or speaking too fast. IMRF was created in 1937. We began operations in 1941. We were created in response to the economic conditions of that time. Local municipal employees were not allowed to participate in Social Security. That has now since changed, but at that time, we were created to provide retirement income to local and public municipal employees. So I said we started out with 5 employers and $5,000 in assets. We currently service over 3,000 units of government plus all of their employees, and we currently have $59.4 billion in assets. So IMRF member benefits are funded by member contributions, the employer contributions made on their behalf, as well as our investment returns with those contributions. We do not receive any funding from the state of Illinois. So this breakdown here shows we currently have 170,735 active members. That means that members are still contributing and working towards their pension. 129,779 inactive members. Those are members who still have contributions on file but are no longer contributing. And 142,329 benefit recipients who are receiving a pension, disability, or death benefit from IMRF. It's also important to note that each employer's funds only funds their own employees' retirement benefits. We do have a full 100% funding goal, and your IMRF benefits are legally enforceable. So again, the Village of Skokie has been in IMRF since 1941. They have a 1,000-hour hourly standard. And what that means is that if you're working more than 1,000 hours in any 12 consecutive month period, IMRF participation is mandatory. So again, the library, I believe, has 106 employees currently participating in IMRF. The actual authorized agent or the IMRF liaison for the library and the village is Julian Prendy. So IMRF has 2 tiers. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. I thought there was a question. I'm sorry. Okay. IMRF has 2 levels of tier participation for our members. It's the regular tier 1 plan and regular tier 2 plan. So if you began participating with your IMRF employer or reciprocal employer prior to January 1st, 2011, you're a tier 1 member. And currently the village has 193 active tier 1 members. Tier 2 participation is if you began participating with your IMRF employer or reciprocal employer on January 1st or after of 2011. And the village currently has 123 active tier 2 members. I mentioned prior that your benefits are funded and based on your member contributions. Those contributions from our members are set at 4.5% tax deferred dollars, meaning no taxes have been withheld from those contributions. That level of contributions has been set by state statute and the Illinois Pension Code and cannot be changed unless another state statute is passed. So a question I get all the time is, can I increase my member contributions? Unfortunately not, it has been set by state statute. So in addition to the member contributions, our employers also contribute on behalf of their members. The regular average 2022 contributions for employers is 8.59%. The Village of Skokie's 2022 rate is 7.44%. You notice that the employer rates are higher than the member rates, and that's because the employer rates not only fund for a member's retirement, it also funds for disability benefits that we offer, death benefits, as well as any unfunded liability contributions, and that 13th payment, which is a supplemental payment that all of our retirees receive once a year, in addition to their normal retirement pension payment once they qualify. Next, we're going to get into how your pension is actually calculated. So your pension is based at retirement time on your final rate of earnings, and I'll go into detail about what that final rate of earnings is, your years and months of service with your IMRF and reciprocal employer, and your age at retirement time. So we're going to start with the final rate of earnings. So for Tier 1 members, what we look for when we go to calculate your pension, we look for your highest consecutive 48 months of wages within your last 10 years of employment. Again, the key word is consecutive. So we look for the highest consecutive 48 months of earnings within your last 10 years of employment. We add those 48 months up together, then divide that amount by 48 to come up with your monthly average salary, also known as your FRE, your final rate of earnings. For Tier 2 members, the calculation is the same. However, we look for your highest consecutive 96 months of earnings within your last 10 years of employment. So for Tier 2 members, we look for a wider range of earnings. Instead of 48 months, we look for the highest consecutive 96 months. Add those 96 months of wages up together, divide them by 96 to come up with your monthly average salary or your FRE. And that's your pension base. That's not your actual monthly pension amount. So to qualify for Register 1 IMRF pension, you must have at least 8 years of service. That's actual service worked, okay? 8 years of service worked. And with that 8 years, the earliest that you can retire for a Tier 1 pension is age 55. However, age 55 is considered early retirement for us. So if you retire under the age of 60 with less than 35 years of service, there is a permanent reduction in your pension amount. That reduction is a 0.25% for each month that you're shy of age 60 or having less than 35 years of service. So we automatically look for the smallest reduction to be applied in that calculation. So as an example, I'm 55 years old with 8 years of service. So I'm closer to age 60 than I am to having 35 years of service. My initial reduction at 0.25% per month is going to be 30% because I'm retiring under the age of 60. Flip that script. So let's just say I'm 59 years of age and I have 22 years of service, okay? So I'm still closer to age 60 than I am to having 35 years of service, but because I'm 59, my initial reduction is only going to be 3%. Again, that reduction is permanent and the smallest reduction is applied. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about Tier 2 benefits. So in order to qualify for a Tier 2 IMRF pension, the earliest that you can retire is at age 62. You must have at least 10 years of work service. And with those 10 years of service, you can retire at age 62, but for our Tier 2 members, that's considered early retirement age. The reduction is higher than for our Tier 1 members. It is 0.5% for each month that you're shy of age 67, which is full retirement age for Tier 2, or having less than 35 years of service. So Tier 2 was actually created to make sure that the fund had longevity. So Tier 2 is more aligned with Social Security Social Security retirement benefits. So first of all, we use a higher range of months to look for your final rate of earnings. Retirement ages are higher, so Tier 2 members, their pensions tend to be a little bit lower than our Tier 1 members for these reasons. So that reduction again is 0.5% per month that you're shy of age 67 or have 35 years of service. And again, that reduction is permanent. So I mentioned that final rate of earnings for Tier 1 is the highest consecutive 48 months over your last 10 years of earnings. And then for Tier 2, it's your highest consecutive 96 months average. That's your pension base. Now we're going to discuss how your years of service and age actually calculate your monthly benefit. So this is our multiplier here. So for years 1 through 15, the multiplier that we use with that FRE amount is 1 2/3%. If you have more than 15 years of service, that multiplier that we use for that FRE amount is 2%. We then add those two amounts together, and that determines your monthly pension amount. So I've broken it down a little bit here. This is a Tier 1 member. They're age 60. So for Tier 1, age 60 is full retirement age. They're retiring with 16 years of service, and that monthly average or that FRE amount is $2,000. So with 16 years of service, we take that $2,000, multiply by 0.1667, which equals $33.34, times 15 for 15 years, that equals $500.01. They retire with 16 years. So we then take that $2,000 and multiply by 2%, which equals $40. We combine these two amounts, and that member's pension is going to be $540.01 per month. This amount comes with a 3% increase based on this original amount, but it's that same dollar amount for that 3% increase every January. So let's talk about those cost of living increases. For Tier 1, it's 3% every January based on the original amount. The first year may be prorated depending on when you retire within that year. For Tier 2, and I'm a Tier 2 member, so I feel the pain. First of all, even though you can retire as early as age 62, you are not entitled to your first cost of living increase until after the age of 67. And with Tier 2 cost of living adjustments, it is the lesser of 3% or 0.5% of whatever this consumer price urban index is from the previous year. So Tier 2 members don't have a set 3% increase like Tier 1 members. So this year's increase is the largest I've ever seen for Tier 2 members. Their increase for 2022 was 2.70%. That's key to note because that's the highest I've seen in the past 10 years, and that's probably the highest it's going to be for quite a while. So that's how those cost of living adjustments are calculated. IMRF does not calculate this cost of living adjustment for Tier 2 members. The Illinois Department of Insurance does that calculation each year, and it provides this information for all Tier 2 members for all Illinois public pension funds. There are a total of 13 Illinois public pension funds in the state of Illinois. So upon passing, if you were to pass away once you start receiving your IMRF pension, if you're a Tier 1 member with an eligible surviving spouse, your spouse will be entitled to 50% of your pension for the rest of their lives. And if you're a Tier 2 member, your spouse will be entitled to 66 2/3% of your monthly pension for the rest of their lives. What qualifies as an eligible spouse? Well, to be considered an eligible spouse, you will need to have been married or in a civil union for at least 1 year prior to retirement, and still married or in a civil union at retirement time. If that is the case, you're considered an eligible spouse of that retiree. I'm going to switch gears one more time, and we're going to talk about a separate savings program called our Voluntary Additional Contributions Program. This program is an optional retirement savings plan that we offer. It does not impact your IMRF pension, but it allows you to save additionally for retirement. So our IMRF Voluntary Additional Contributions Program, you can contribute up to 10% from your IMRF paycheck. And these contributions are after-tax contributions, whereas your pension contributions are pre-tax. Your contributions into the VAC program are after-tax. And another question I get all the time is, can I put in money outside of my paycheck? Unfortunately, you cannot, nor is there a catch-up provision for this. So your contributions are after tax. The benefit is that you start earning interest at 7.25% the year after you start contributing. So interest does not start accruing until after one full year of contributing, and it is credited annually based on the previous January 1st balance. So I'm just going to get into the nitty-gritty of this.
Brian, can you not get into the nitty-gritty of it yet? Sorry, we're running a little long, so.
Oh, okay. Well, these are actually slides, so I only have 23 slides. Okay, so.
Can we open it up for questions at this point?
Okay, no problem. Well, I just want to go over the actual pension calculation with you, and now I'm going to go back on camera and answer any questions that you guys may have. I'm sorry for taking up so much of your time. My apologies. Are there any questions regarding my presentation or other questions you might have about IMRF, please?
If you want to explain the calculation, that's fine. Go ahead and do that.
Oh, okay. Well, with the VAC, and I'll just stay on camera, VAC, this is how it works out. So this is Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill both started working for their IMRF employer at the age of 25. They were making $30,500 at that time, earning 2% raises each year before retiring at age 67. Jack contributed 1% from age 25 to 67. He contributed a total of $20,484 of his own money that had already been taxed. Interest earned was $83,725 for a lump sum benefit of $104,209, or he can convert this amount to a monthly annuity of $765 per month for the rest of his life on top of his IMRF pension. Jill was a little bit more financial savvy. She started contributing at a rate of 5%. So by the age of 67, she had contributed $102,418 of her own money that had already been taxed. Interest earned was $418,625 for a total benefit of $521,044. She can take a refund of this amount, roll that interest over to avoid any taxes, or convert this full amount to an additional separate monthly annuity of $3,868 for the rest of her life on top of her IMRF pension. So the VAC program is very flexible. However, the longer you contribute, the better the benefit is. Thank you so much for inviting me to join. So we discussed had a brief introduction to IMRF, understanding your benefits, how your pension is calculated, our voluntary additional contributions program, and I'm the additional resources. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now.
Thank you, Brian.
I have a question. Well, first, thank you, Brian, for joining us. I found your presentation very informative and helpful. And thank you also for the email calculations that you sent to us prior to this meeting. Those were also very helpful in understanding calculations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And the question that I have for you is on that voluntary contribution, that first slide that you showed us. You said the interest rate that people are receiving on that is 7.25%. I want to know what you're all investing in this climate that you're getting 7.25%.
So the voluntary additional contributions interest rate mirrors our expected annual rate of return. So IMRF's annual rate of return with your member and employer contributions is 7.25%. So that's why those interest returns mirrors that amount. So it used to be 7.5%, and our annual rate of return used to be 7.5% until about 5 years ago. Our board reviews our annual rate of return every 3 years to make sure it's feasible and that we're meeting our goals. So even if we don't make the 7.25% on our return rate, your VAC contributions are guaranteed that rate.
They're guaranteed that rate?
Mm-hmm. And unless the board changes the rate of return, but yes. So even if we don't make 7.25% on our annual investment returns, your VAC contributions are still guaranteed that 7.25% return.
Where does that gap potentially come from?
I'm sorry?
Who covers that gap if that investment?
IMRF does. We absolutely do, because typically our annual rate of return is almost 5 to 6% above that. So we have, like I said, we have about $59 billion in investment returns right now. So we're doing very well, and IMRF covers that loss. Now, regarding your pension benefits, if we have a loss regarding retirement returns, then unfortunately, yes, then the village will take a hit on that, but not with the VAC.
Interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Life, anything?
You were magnificently clear. Thank you.
I'm sorry again. I apologize for going over time. I know Richard stressed that we should make this brief, but I wanted to give you as much as I could. So thank you so much again for inviting me. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank
you.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Yep, a lot of information. Right. So now we're going to switch and move on to roofing report.
So I want to introduce Tom Hutchinson and welcome him back to the library and the board meeting. For those of you who were here back in the summer of last year or spring of last year, you met Tom when he was interviewing projects. So Tom is here to provide an update on where we stand with the project, and hopefully it's a good.
Yes, Richard asked me to take the next 2 hours to go over. No, the good news is, as of today, the project is basically complete. They removed some materials. There may be some up there, don't quote me with the snow, but they have that in there. We'll talk about, they have a few little items to do in spring. One is some additional weeding out in the garden, and then some additional sealant repairs to take care of the leaks that are occurring on the west and the east wall there. So the contractor will have some retainage held back in the cost of that work as well. And he'll bill for that in probably April. We don't want him to do the work until it can be done properly. It's not changing anything. So on there, I put together a small PowerPoint to kind of, I don't know if you've seen the roof or been up there or looked down on it, but first of all, I wanted to say thank you for trusting me and our firm with your need to keep the water out. I think it's this is the first time actually I've seen it with the covering on the metal panels taken off. I've seen it with the panels up, and I think that canopy looks great. The best part is that you don't ever have to paint it again, ever. It's covering all that steel that was there. So should I just go like this and so we can click it? Obviously, this is, none of us were around at this time, but this is when the addition, I presume, was built. This was a document provided to us, and just thought I'd give you, this is like the old, and then we're going to go into the new. This is what precipitated our involvement. Is Richard called me out. And they had can you everyone hear me okay? Because I have a mask on, I can.
That's fine.
Or take it off. They along that wall, you see that whitish material. That's an area that was leaking, and you can see the patch down by the courtyard, and it's been leaking and patched and leaking and patched, leaking and patched. We came out and investigated and kind of understood why, because that's an expansion joint, and when they installed the addition, they actually cut the old roofing, and the way that roofing is you usually have, it's called an envelope. You bring the roofing up and back on. It's up. They had cut that off. So when the water got in the system, it just leaked and there was no stop, basically, no dam there. Come on. I decided to take a test cut just to see what was around. So this is the top roof. It's called coal tar pitch. It's very odorous. It's actually a product of steel processing, about the coking of steel. But the patch or where the roofing's been removed there, it should be almost a brown, light brown, but it's a dark brown because it's wet. So I went down a little farther, and I don't know if you can see with the lights on, but that's actually free water on the bottom. So there's actually water at the bottom of the roof, sitting on the roof. So, I informed Richard that probably not a good thing. The only thing keeping it out is you have some concrete deck that prevents that, but it ultimately comes in, deteriorates concrete, it'll come in holes. So this is what the roofs looked like before. It was dead level. There was no slope on the roof at all. When we designed the new roof, I would have loved to move the roof drains. I would have added more and spread them out, but not with the new ceilings downstairs. It would have just been a big mess, and we wouldn't gain a whole lot for the cost of doing the interior work. This is the high roof. This roof has been on for substantial time. When we first observed it, I thought that the roof is on it's deteriorating. This was the perfect time not to tear it off, but to cover it over with something that enhance it. And rather than a coating, we used a thick membrane that should last 30, 40 years. So it's we caught it at the right time, which was substantial in the amount of savings. So that, after we were fortunate enough to be awarded, we put together a bid package. This just happens to be the cover page of the set of drawings that the contractors bid. They started out the project by tearing off the old roof. They have to tear off the old roof. Actually, there was two roofs. They tear it off, get down to the concrete. It was not a concrete like you see in the sidewalks. It's kind of they call it it's like when they put it on at first, it was a nailable concrete. I mean, you could nail it, but it hardens over time. So it's not very smooth, and it's kind of rough. When they took it off, there were some areas that became powderish, and we put in a lightweight concrete, hydraulic cement in there. Right, what they're doing now is the blue stuff is adhesive. So they're spraying the adhesive on the concrete. It goes down into little nooks and crannies and cracks. And then the membrane they're putting on is actually what the membrane is on the top of the roof. This is a fleece back one. White is like a felt. It's almost like a Velcro, the other side of the Velcro. And they roll it into the adhesive. That became your vapor retardant. After they put it in, they roll it to achieve a good bond. And that's why they did this to the entire roof, and that took about a month to tear everything off. Look in the background, you can see that's how thick the existing roof was. It's like only 3 inches. And with it being wet, the thermal value was very low. So, as the crews were tearing off the old roof and putting down what's called the vapor retarder, there are other items that building envelope we took care of. This happens to be they're resealing all there's vertical caulk joints, and one that's very important, that's we're taking care of out in front. There's a horizontal joint at the top where it steps back. That was wide open. You could take a screwdriver and push it all the way in. And so they removed all the sealant, put a new primer in, new foam rod, and recaulked it. And also, we require mock-ups and samples on different things. This happens to be the first mock-up of the perimeter wall that we put up, or curb. And I rejected it. One is because it's much too high. Go to the next one. Also, the original drawings had showed some wood blocking on the bottom, like a 2x6 or 2x. Well, we didn't see any there. You can see there's some wood out in front, but we're not nailing there. We're screwing back on that flange. So on the second mock-up, you can see they added a 2x8 there. And then that curb was you can see it's shrunk much more appealing. And then they screwed it down. So that's an insulated curb basically to raise up to account for the tapered insulation that we have. So this is the new roof going in place. So note first the thickness, the big, how much more thermal value again. It's about 300% more than you had before. So you have to check bills from last year to this year to see if you have any savings, but I think you're having some. The insulation is being set in adhesive, the same adhesive they put down the vapor retardant. It's a foam adhesive. You use the spray foam insulation at your house, the little can. It's similar to that, but it's a glue rather than insulation. And they have to put the pails down. The adhesive is very good, but it has to touch something. It has to be stuck together. So we require these 50 or 35 pound cans on there. And you can see it goes pretty quick. They're just moving them back and forth. But it's very important to get that down. And you can see it very slightly from the roof edge on your left. It's sloping down to the right to the drain. And that's just what it kind of looks like from above. They come from there's an expansion joint too, so they're coming across and then moving across. All the layers of the insulation are supposed to be tight butted together, but we know that there's construction tolerances and whatnot, so they all have to be filled in with spray foam. Most of this occurs at the roof edge where they don't get quite tight, but so that we don't want to have any thermal shorts or where the heat loss can come up through the joint. So they did a lot of this. They went through. Most people don't use a can; they use a big canister, but they have found it easier to do this. So either way, it's fine. You can see this is how they put the adhesive down. It's called the splatter foam spray. I like to use it better. There's one that's a spray foam that you spray it, but I find that it kind of wants to float a little bit, and it sticks to everything, including cars, bicycles, people's glasses, brick, precast. We would use this. I think it serves a good purpose without endangering other things. All the drains are replaced and are new. This happens to be the new roof drain. Obviously, even in November, there was nights when the ice froze up there. The skylight here was completely resealed. You can't see it; it's small, but all those frames got resealed. And then at the bottom where the glass meets the metal, it's a flush joint. So you can imagine water keeps going over this flush joint. It's called the sealant tape that seals the existing joint there. And then there's the new coping on the top there. You can see there's still some protection materials. That's what is between the glass and the coping that's been removed now. You have the two new skylights. They're glass now, not polycarbonate. So one, they're much safer if there's a maintenance person on the roof and he happens to fall and hits that, he won't go through it. Plus, it'll substantially last much longer. And that's the roof down below is basically near completion, except the sheet metal. And you can see on the higher roof, they're working on that. The membrane's not tight in there because there was some wood blocking questions that we had to work out. You probably don't notice it, and it's very not noticeable, but in the center of the west wall, it sticks out like 6 inches. And if you have a piece of canted wood and you're bringing the wood back, how do you make it to be the same elevation? So they need to work that out. Again, that's the other half of the roof being completed. One thing I noticed too is the maintenance personnel were either walking on the rocks, which I don't find a problem, but a lot of people do, or they were walking in the garden. We tried to prevent that, so we put these walkways down on there. And then this is how when you get down to the other patio for Richard there, it jogs over onto the grass. So now they're not walking on the grass for the plantings anymore. And then it wraps around and goes into the chiller area, and it wraps around all the chiller. In the background, you can see we designed a new stair that goes up. It used to be a ladder, which one thing is, it can be difficult to get up on a ladder, especially if you're carrying equipment for a mechanic or the maintenance. I find so much so that people don't ever go up it. So we provided a nice, safe ladder. And it comes up to the roof. The protection pavers aren't there, but it comes up over like this. And you probably see them if you walk by, but there's a protective railing around there. So that, again, type of slippage, they can't fall over the edge. This is nearing the completion of that upper roof. And on that upper roof, we just put the membrane over it. We used the same blue adhesive and then put the fleece back into it. These are the concrete beams you have sticking out all the way around the building. Well, we waterproofed the top of those. So we protected, that's where all the snow sits, ice, and we thought now's the opportunity to waterproof them and prevent the water. You can't, I was really, being that it's a very aggregate texture, I was worried that the coating would drip down in there, but I thought they did a fantastic job because you can't even see it, and that's the whole point. Air conditioners were separated, raised on a platform, and the piping was set in separate curb, so that in the future, if you eliminate this, you can just remove the piping and it's not affecting the roof, or if you're changing it out, it makes it, I think, a little more maintenance friendly. Here's the railing that's up there. You can't see the ladder, but this is a railing up there around that railing, around the stair. These are protected walkways now at the far end here. This is the east walkways there. One, snow and ice as it slides off the metal roof, it'll hit the walkway pad. This year it hasn't been so bad. Well, you got a lot more snow here than we have in Barrington. We only have like 2 inches, you guys got. But if the ice and stuff falls off, it hits the walkway pad, so it's protected. But also now the guys have a way to walk without damaging the roof down to the air conditioner down there. Then around the mechanical units as well, they tend to, like when they check filters and stuff, take that fan off and set it. Now they can set it on the rubber rather than on the roof. Now, can anyone figure the one thing that I probably drew or had drawn wrong here? If you're the person walking on those walkway pads, I always comment that architects should do this on sidewalks, but I didn't do it here. And I picked it up today. Can anyone just tell me what if you were the designer, what would you say? Or the guy walking, what would you do if you were walking? If you're a kid, what would you do? Exactly. So normally I have them, and I don't know how, if it becomes a problem, I'll add some more, but normally I put it on an angle. I always say, make the maintenance men walk and have them drop bread. But you're absolutely right. I'm a firm believer, put the sidewalk or put the walkways where people are going to use them. But you're dead on. It's because you're the young kid here. The next one. Just an enhancement. While there hasn't ever been any problem, in the 4 corners, we have these concrete pavers just to assist with any uplift for the one time in the next 20 or 30 years that you might have a severe wind. It just adds a little added protection. Then the last part of the project was putting the panels up, which took a while. We had to get the right color first, and then the ordering, as you may have heard, the materials were very difficult to come by. And these are the metal wall panels. They're about a 1/4 inch thick, so it's not thin sheet metal. It's that's the protective sheathing or plastic they have on it. You can see here now that that's the completed one, and again, those were a lot of that up there was steel that had to be painted, was starting to rust, and now you don't either have to have your maintenance people paint it, or you do not have to hire someone ever again. All for reducing any type of maintenance. Here's the front canopy. as well. And then this is the east wall. This is now we're done with the project. Andy found some water staining up there. And we don't really know if it's new or old, but it looks like it's been there a long time. And we, roofers and the sheet metal and the masons came out. And that horizontal joint I talked to you about that we repaired on the other side is open right here on the side. If you go to the next one, you can kind of see the joint at the top. You can see it's wide open, so when the water comes out, it just kind of goes in. So come spring, those are all three sides that weren't touched are going to be completed. And they'll do that off a lift. It'll probably take about a month. They cut all that out, both the horizontal and the vertical ones in the corner, to be completely sealed, and we're 99.99% sure that that's going to take care of it. They're also going to reseal the windows, because I understand with the previous interior project, put new glass in, but they kept the old frames. So we're going to make sure that those are watertight. And then in association with this in the spring, and I was explaining to Richard, unfortunately, you want a dry substrate for the sealant. And even in March, sometimes the cold weather, there can be condensation on the concrete when you cut it out, and then it won't adhere. So we probably not till April we get a good. And they'll probably start on the south side and work north, so it gives it some time to warm up. But I'd rather trust for a later start and get it done right, because it's not easy to get to. But thank you very much. I appreciate it, the opportunity. I think everybody on the project, the contractors did a very nice job. I know JJ, I told him he's the general contractor, the roofing contractor, told me he should get a library card here. He was here so often. But I hope you're happy with it. It was very expensive. I do know that, but I'd like to say that even if everybody here stayed on the board until death, if you were the Supreme Court, you'd never have to touch the roofs again. So that's my goal.
That's
is
what we like to hear.
that, because and a good thing you did this year, because materials have gone up 20% since when you bought it. So the job would have gone up maybe 15%. That's $150,000-$200,000.
Also, we would have endangered eventually our interior of the building.
Yeah. I think it was a right decision, I'd like to think, and we certainly enjoyed working on it, and we have a great contractor and subcontractors. I think everybody worked together, and then part of it is a little flexibility here with Richard and Tim and then Andy. It all worked out good. I mean, probably some things I don't know about, inconveniences with dumpsters or whatnot. But
no, we were, I want to say from our point of view, it was a smooth process. The only hiccups were weather related, and that's something that's out of all of our control. So, but working with Tom and working with Combined Roofing, a pleasure, very smooth process. And Tom, just the total budget that we kind of allotted for this was 2.5 million, but the bid came in at 2.138, and then I'll add 7% of that for your fees. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to be well under 2.5.
yeah, there's no extra cost.
Right,
It's
so
done.
we're going to save about 230,000 or so. Kind of big ballpark estimates.
Yeah, that's, I think, going with not having to tear off the upper roof.
Yeah, exactly.
I could have done it, you could have paid for it, but I didn't see there was any, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do.
And also, Tom had mentioned to me that even the additional sealant work in the spring that he had mentioned would be put under the allowance.
Right, we had an allowance, this is extra dollars, and I asked Richard, we could give it back. They could give it back, or we could do this, and this way it's all taken care of. And it's out very well.
Yeah.
If there are any questions, we can.
Tom, what are the warranties if, God forbid, there is a problem?
Yeah, then you'll pretty soon we'll be sending over a big warranty packet, but the roof's warranted for 20 years. And the warranty is that, it says if there's a leak that's not due to the exclusions in the warranty, they cover it. I like to say that good design and good installation are more important than the warranty, but it's nice. I say the warranty is mostly for, in case, what if the material starts to deteriorate? Then you have it and replace the material. It's not so much for the little leak. No, it's helpful, but you'll, with all this down there, you'll never have a leak in the center of the roof. You might have, we had some issues with the drain, and because of the weight movement of the drain to the drain bowl, but I think that's been corrected. But there'll be a sheet metal warranty, workmanship and material, roofing, and then a 2-year roofing, and contractor's warranty. There'll be the siding of the panels. There'll be the roof drains, the HVAC work, and the stairs. The stairs for lifetime. So there'll be a whole big pack of it. I give the library a copy of that. And I've always retained one because sometimes things get misplaced. Or one time, only, I don't know, if you have a minute, just the one time at the College of Lake County, at the base, material at the base of the wall is starting to deteriorate. We caught it early and contacted the manufacturer. They came out, looked at it, and said, they took a piece for testing, but they knew they replaced it all. It was all, the College of Lake County is a lot of linear footage. They replaced it all, which was nice to have because I bet it was $200,000 worth of work because you got to take off the old and put the new on and pull the gravel away.
Other questions?
Thanks again for the opportunity. I know JJ's not here, but he's very thankful and appreciated it too. I think they did a great job.
Thank you.
So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey,
Yeah, I wanted to come in person.
Right.
Okay,
Of course, you're also.
Appreciate that.
So if you go to page 6, it's approval of the pay. Some retainage of 200,000. As we're talking about, there's a couple of small things that they're.
Yeah, there'll be another pay request soon, but we'll reduce the retention slightly. And then just gain interest on it for.
And then we have a month or two where we won't have a pay app and then have the last pay app.
Yes. Okay. And also, what I forgot to mention, while the project's done, we'll do a final inspection, but I'll wait till it's clean, I want to see if there's any debris up there. Wait till the snow all melts. Just to make sure. It's actually nice because then if something opened over the winter, we can catch it and repair it. But there'll be a final inspection, and I'll be out here when they're doing the sealing.
Perfect.
As well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice
Thanks,
week.
Tom.
We vote on in case there's, so payment page 6, the line 8, the current payment due is for $85,767.30. Any questions about that for Tom? Pages 6 through 15 are all the. Anything anybody wants to ask?
Just so you know, the process is they send us a pay request. We call it a pencil copy, and we review it. And sometimes, you say, gee, that you kind of anticipated a little too much. Can you revise this? It goes back and forth, and then they finalize it, and then we certify it. Amazing, too, that it's the right amount. I always make sure that if for some reason the contractor goes away, there's enough money to finish the job with somebody else, and as well as we don't pay them unless the work's done correctly. And I have rejected pay requests because things weren't going well, and the board would decide on it, but nobody ever, nobody wants to overrule somebody who says it's not done right. That's very seldom. I try to tell people up front. But,
There are no questions. Can I have a motion to approve the current payment due? Second.
I'll second.
And since this is a pay request, we have to vote individually. So Michelle,
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
I vote yes. Noreen?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Right, that passes 5-0 for the payment, current payment.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank you.
evening.
Have a great
Thank you.
night.
Bye now.
Thank you for coming in.
Right, move on to architecture.
Yes.
Everybody okay?
We have Andrew Berman and Alex McLean from Andrew Berman Architect, both on the Zoom here. Can you guys hear us?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
hi.
Can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Great.
So, as I mentioned in my director's report, we've been working with both Andrew and Alex on the third floor master plan, and we thought it would be good for the board to receive a update on how the process has been and what the proposed plan is at this point. We do have a hard copy for you. We thought it might be good for your reference as Andrew talks through the plan. And then you don't have any cost estimates tonight, but Andrew is working on that with Shales McNutt Construction.
And just to clarify, there's nothing we need to vote on.
No,
This is
no
information.
voting, nothing up for approval tonight. It's just more for information purposes. Answer any questions the board might have. You want to take it away, Andrew?
Sure. Hello, everyone. We've, as Richard said, we've been working with Richard, Laura, and a group of team leaders and representatives from within the library on third floor master plan. And this third floor master plan has been an opportunity to discuss what has worked, what has not worked, what has evolved in terms of library staffing and working dynamics since the library had been built and furnished. So there was a lot of opportunity to elicit valuable discussion from multiple people, and the design process benefited from that. During the design process, we worked iteratively. That is, we worked on a number of different schemes, and I will give you a quick update on 3, but I would like to start by just briefly showing you the existing plan. So are we going to be able to project?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if everybody can see this, this is the plan as is, and the third floor is a well-utilized space. It's a good amount of space, and in some respects, it would, as a kind of summary of what is there, I'd say the third floor is much like much of the library before it was renovated, in that it was indicative of thinking at the time in which it was designed and built out, and it was good and correct as such. But obviously time has passed, and library dynamics have changed, and so we've started by kind of asking large questions about who needs to work with whom and who is best situated where. Now, I'm going to just quickly orient you here. On the left of the screen is the admin area, which Alex is highlighting. That's admin. And then to the right of that is the conference room, formerly known as the boardroom. There we go. And then to the right and below that on the screen is the learning experience team, as well as really a number of other team players from different departments. There's a bit of catch-all there. The central bay of the third floor is the cafe, as well as a conference room. There we go. To the right of that is the youth division, youth services, To the right of that is IT. And then the last department on the right, all the way at the extreme right, the north, is access. And so access was an interesting starting point to the conversation. Access is at the north extreme of the building. The elevators are really at the south end of the building. And access is the department that has the most stuff coming and going, stuff being books, supplies, deliveries. Everything comes up through the elevators, all the way down the hall to access. It gets processed, labeled, and ordered, and then it goes back. So this was the beginning of a conversation. Who's sitting where? What are the good adjacencies? How could we improve upon this? The few other things I'm going to add before we go to the proposed plan is that across the hallway, there were a few people. Vanessa has a little kind of graphics studio there with her team. There's an archivist next to her. There's various storage space, much of which can be optimized across the hall. And then there are the restrooms. And we're going to come back to the restrooms and talk a little bit more in depth there, because the restrooms are an important part of this renovation. So that's all to orient you. And yeah, and now we can go to the proposed plan. Great. So this proposed plan is the result of having worked iteratively, as I said, with everybody through a number of meetings, presentations, discussions, and Richard and Laura elicited a good bit of staff feedback during that process, which all got folded back into this. And this plan is the document, well, one of the documents that we've now shared with Shells McNutt, who are going to be doing the pricing. Let me walk you through what we have arrived at. Starting again from left to right, we're going to retain the admin area where it is. We're going to take the former boardroom and make that a combination large meeting room, staff development lounge. We're bringing access towards across from the elevators. So access is across from the elevators. So that books, dollies, supplies, deliveries can come right off the elevator and be processed more efficiently. We're retaining the cafe where it is, primarily because it has a wonderful outdoor terrace off the cafe, which is a well-utilized and appreciated amenity. All the more so during this time in which people wanted to be socially distanced. We've kind of consolidated youth services and the CME departments next to each other. And then put the learning experience team plus some other related members all the way at the right. Great. Now, and then brought IT across the hallway. And these adjacencies reflect, I think, good communication and relationships between the departments, as we've learned. Now, a few things I just want to say about the scheme as a whole, without getting into any more specifics. This scheme is the product of a very specific design test which was premised upon how much of the existing architecture that is in place could be reused. That is to say, how to maximize the reuse of partitions, of glass offices, the doors, the hardware, all of that, which is still in good working order and of value. And so this scheme very much reflects that kind of thinking in which we tested whether or not things had to be actually removed or replaced in order to work well. And perhaps this a follow-up meeting, we can get into more specifics about that. But that was one of the primary drivers of this. Another primary design concern throughout the whole third floor was how to create the proper balance between private workspace, acoustically enclosed workspace, and communal workspace. I think the last couple of years have sort of brought to a finer point discussions about personal space and have tested the limits of what it is to work together, what it is to work separately, how to co-work, both face-to-face, but also using digital means like we're doing tonight with you. And so to take advantage of the kind of developments that we've been observing and discussing, we're providing a lot of small conference rooms for anywhere from one person, for allowing more people to make private calls and do private focused work. Alex is highlighting these around. To small conference rooms where anywhere from perhaps 2 to 4 to 6 people might work together. And then larger conference rooms where teams or even departments could come together. And the inclusion of all of these is, I think, to a large part going to make the experience of working together in large open spaces more comfortable and practical, because those people who need privacy or who are going to make noise by virtue of perhaps long calls or attending Zoom calls that have to be broadcast can go to these discrete private spaces. And in a sense, this strategy that we're proposing here on the third floor is somewhat recollective of much of what we've done on the second floor, where was a rebalancing of shared public space together versus discrete private space that either individuals, small groups, or large groups, as you are tonight, are in. So that's the kind of overview of where we are. The one other thing I want to show you in more detail is the bathroom suites. And Alex can blow that up on the screen. Wonderful. So currently there are, in this location, men's room and a women's room. And the men's room and the women's room have are conventional bathrooms in which there are a number of stalls, and the stalls do not go to the floor, as one would expect in a bathroom of 30, 40 years of age. And what we've done here on this plan that's on the screen right now is to renovate the men's and the women's room and create a third bathroom, which is labeled E for everyone. And within each of these bathrooms, the two sexed and the non-sexed, non-declarative, there are a number of private rooms. So the private rooms, right, where Alex just ticked off, the first two are a toilet and a sink. And then the men's and the women's room each have a fully accessible, ADA accessible sink, toilet, and shower stall, so that each bathroom has the opportunity for people to wash, say people who come to work on a bicycle, for example, or need to wash for any other reason. And then the non-designated sex private room also has a sink, a toilet, a shower, and is fully accessible. In addition to providing these private spaces within each bathroom, the men's room has lockers and 2 sinks out in the open for those who just need to wash hands, and an old-fashioned urinal for the traditionalists. And then in the women's room, there are also 2 sinks out in the open, lockers, and then a private room for breastfeeding or basically a private time. And then in addition to that, we're providing a locker room, which is available off the hallway without going into the bathrooms themselves, which would be accessible to all the staff. And so I think that this renovation is going to bring the bathrooms up to the level of the decisions that were made downstairs in terms of accessibility, in terms of privacy, and convenience. And it will have the added benefit of providing this bathroom that's labeled E for people who feel more comfortable in a non-sexed bathroom in privacy. Okay. And the last thing I want to just show you very quickly is just to click through some of the iterations that we went through. So you can see that this was arrived at through a kind of process. Richard, I hope I'm not going on too long about all this.
I think we're making good time, and I want to make sure the board has time for questions as well. Andrew, while we're waiting, can you all just comment on kind of what a master plan is on a basic level and what it's not, and kind of, because the lighting, the flooring, all of that is not shown here, obviously, in terms of getting those benefits. But when will that come, and what the design phase will follow?
Sure. Yes. So the master plan is really starts with asking the large questions about how the institution, the Skokie Public Library administration team, and departmental teams who use the space. And so it really, we sought to develop the high level relationships between the departments. We questioned whether or not there needed to be departments at all. We discussed the adjacencies, the flow, the circulation. We discussed kind of macro issues of working together versus working separate, working out in the open versus in enclosed spaces. We also made a list, or the library made a list of all the positions and all of the people in those positions, so that we could start to assign places for everybody. And so this plan is as a result really is a plan exercise in situating the spaces, the size of the spaces, the relationships of the spaces. And in the process, we put in furniture because furniture is a very good indicator of the scale and the flow of the spaces. As Richard said, we have not designated the finishes such as carpet, wall and ceiling materials, lighting, hardware, and many other decisions that will be made. All of those decisions we've summarized in kind of generic terms for SMC, so they can go ahead and price this work based upon some guidance we give them and based upon their experience in renovating similar types of spaces. That's what the master plan is seeking to accomplish. We're going to come up with an itemized budget that we'll present to you in the future. And should that be voted on to proceed, we would get into a much finer grain of discussion with Richard, Laura, and the various team members to go back into the spaces, work them out in much more detail, ultimately select furniture, finishes, lighting, IT and data distribution issues, the whole host of issues that will go into a final high performance space. So I'm just going to, in just a couple minutes, click through these options. These were not the only options that we developed, but it's a neat summary of what we did. And in this first option, we tested out what do we get if we leave almost everything or try to maximize what was there. And so that was the test. And it was a very useful test. Clicking to the second option. Very good. We kind of went one step further and allowed, while still retaining a good bit of the existing partitions and office spaces, we at this point brought access adjacent to the admin area. We resized the youth areas, the PME areas, the learning experience areas to make them more specific to the actual way people work there and the head count within each department rather than working exclusively with existing partitions. And in this plan, we also went much further in developing the balance between open workspace and smaller enclosed workspaces. And something to note about the first and the second schemes is that the private offices for department heads and management and many of the conference rooms are around the perimeter of the building, adjacent to the windows. And the open work areas, the common work areas are inboard of that, but with lines of sight to the windows and with natural light. Right. And then the third scheme, was testing out an inversion of that general relationship. So the open staff areas were brought next to the windows, and the private management offices and department heads, for the most part, had inboard offices, glass inboard offices. And so we tested out not just different types of spaces and different adjacencies, but also this kind of high level difference between management and enclosed spaces against the windows versus open spaces. And something that was pretty unanimous, I thought, from all the feedback we got, was a preference not for option 3, but for keeping the offices around the perimeter. And option 2 became the basis of the final scheme that I presented previously. So that's a summary. I hope this wasn't too much of a drone. And I feel just that we're in a wonderful place, having done an awful lot of learning by discussion and observation, and also building on some kind of basic sensibilities that we developed downstairs, so that should there, be the desire to proceed, we have a great foundation for going ahead with the third floor.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, question.
Andrew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Right, I'm looking at this area that's marked on the left, I'm sorry, on the right, that's marked LE.
Yes.
So the desk setups in there, there's that, those middle parts that are almost like, are those walls? And how high are those partitions? What is that in between the desks?
Those are indicated as partial height desk enclosures. So there'd be a combination of acoustical panels and storage units, personal storage units, so that each person is visually screened from their neighbor. And depending on which furniture is ultimately selected, and we would be depending on how much storage they get, how much actual workspace they get, how much privacy each person will get. But this is indicative of a generous amount of space for 8 workstations. Alex, if you can just circle this in the center of the area.
The traffic patterns, would I be able to walk in between those to get to my space? I'm trying to get a sense. Right now, when I look at it, I don't have a good feeling of the traffic pattern for the people who work in that area.
Right. So there are aisles, if you will, to the right and the left of this general work area that people can walk down those aisles and then tuck into any individual desk from that.
You can cut through.
Well, that was what I was asking about. The cut through seemed strange.
Yes, it would be possible to cut through there. There's a 3-foot gap. That gap is 3 feet wide, so it would be comfortable.
It would be strange. So, okay, but that makes, the larger one, I needed you to point that out because I didn't. I'm like, how did I get there?
Now, I want to make the point. Your question is a good question. It leads to, I think, a good point to make. The furniture that's shown right now are placeholders. The placeholders to establish the amount of size we need per person or team, to establish circulation patterns. But as we work into each department and in fact work into each office and each room, there's going to be a whole lot more consideration brought to how people will work, interact, and what the furniture needs to be. So the furniture arrangements are likely to evolve, but we know at this point how many people we can comfortably accommodate and let them do their job.
And just one other thing, looking at CME, where it says print, is that a storage room for paper and printers?
Yes.
Okay, and then coming straight across to the left, there's the copy room. So there's copiers and paper storage there?
Right. So the copy room, which is within the administration area, historically had the large format, high output, big Xerox machines. And we're showing space for 2, and then there'll be counter for prepping, assembling, and layout and storage for all the supplies. So these copiers are used from within admin, but they are also going to be connected to all the other departments. So somebody could send a copy order to these machines. and then retrieve it, their prints at the copy room here. The print room off CME is skewed a bit more towards the graphic design work that is done within the CME department. They do a lot of the displays and labeling, and kind of signage, the temporary and seasonal signage that happens within.
Large scale poster printing.
No,
Yeah.
and I do understand that equipment. My question is still back to traffic, you know, and if I'm working in LE, I have to go all the way across.
No, there's, not every space has it shown, but we have counters and everything in each work area, and we have it put in like a little marker for like a printer copier in each workstation. We'll outfit every work area.
Okay,
with
and
what
that
you
was,
need. Yeah.
that was basically the question as to whether that's just for the large sort of industrial level equipment, but that
Like
there would be other.
Yeah, for instance, we know Access needs some of that capability for labels and, you know, for processing, so they'll likely have a significant, you know, piece of machinery in their workspace.
Yeah, and that's the answer to that question. I've worked in offices where you had to walk
Yeah,
around to get your copies, so I'm sensitive to that.
Oh, we're from our staff about that if we didn't properly outfit our.
Richard, how much are managers given to this?
A lot. I mean, every step of the way,
So
we've received feedback from management and, but also at the very beginning of the process, Andrew and Alex came on site. We spent a whole 2 days walking through, just spending time talking with, not just management, but, staff working in the area also.
Andrew, is it accurate, so you can now walk from LE into CME into YS without having to go out into the hall and around?
That's correct, Gene. Thank you for saying that. That's a really important point that I failed to mention. So there was a desire here to start to stitch together the departments a bit more than the current spatial arrangement, which feels siloed. And it's done through the doorways that can connect each of the rooms. It's also done a bit by providing, or scatter sounds too arbitrary, but having different small off meeting rooms throughout the whole third floor. So there's an expectation that these meeting rooms are a kind of common resource that are going to be shared some. And some of these meeting rooms are off the public hallway. So those are very explicitly shared by anybody. But then there are meeting rooms within each department that have a degree of shareability.
I have a question. Based off of the feedback from staff, what were some of their biggest concerns or the biggest things that they were hoping to get out of this renovation?
Before this proposed plan or after?
Let's do both.
Okay. Before, I mean, I think Andrew addressed a lot of it, but a lot of the issues with our spaces are not addressed with the master plan, but they're like lighting, flooring, they're very outdated. We need to replace those with whether we proceed with like a renovation or not, you know?
Okay.
So that's one thing. And then right now we have work stations or cubicles essentially that don't work for our staff. And were designed for departments that no longer exist. So we have a very large workspace where Access is shown right here. That is kind of cobbled together with like different departments like LE and CME. Some people from CME, not all.
Right.
You know, and they're just kind of like squished in there, you know, and so that's another thing. It just doesn't fit kind of the way our org structure is currently. Another thing is people have asked for like private working room, even if they don't have an office, they'd like to go in to make a phone call, set of phone calls, or maybe they just need to like focus on a task, and it's hard to do because of just ambient noise in an open queue setting. So that was another request. Just more collaborative room, obviously, too. Just over the past 20 years, we've become so much more collaborative across departments, whereas before it was more siloed work. So that's another thing. The restrooms were a big thing. Current restrooms, so we've had requests for like a shower in the building for many years. There's I would be bike to work or am I missing anything big here?
No, I think those were the highlights. Also, the kitchen staff lounge area is pretty shabby at this point. So sprucing up a space that staff spend time in every day is a priority.
I mean, we're very blessed that we have a lot of room to work with here. You know, a lot of libraries don't have this type of square footage for their staff, so that's not the issue. It's more of kind of finding the right fit current day work rather than kind of trying to work within like the structure that worked for us 20 years ago.
Also, facilitating greater collaboration.
Yes, and also private work too. Solo work. More people are working like a hybrid remote type of work schedule. That means more people are on Zoom and kind of or joining meetings with other collaborators outside of the organization, whether they're in the community or across or with vendors that are on Zoom calls. Places to take a video conferencing call are important. Also, I forgot.
Therefore, more meeting space that you hear of all different varying sizes.
Exactly. And one more thing I should mention is compared to kind of 20 years ago, I think the amount of training that we staff development activities that we do is just skyrocketed. So creating spaces where whether they're group rooms or even in is actually that the board has expressed that they don't want to be on the third floor boardroom anymore because we can actually, I mean, I think this room makes sense for the board meetings, first of all. And then the boardroom is a really nice piece of,
Square
space.
footage.
Yeah, right off the elevator, right near admin. We can turn that into a learning commons for staff and that a place where people can kind of feel like they're, developing, being trained. I see that as a really nice, we can do a lot of good things with that space.
I know it's boring, but we have 5 staff here. Do you guys have questions or comments? You guys are living with it. Easy to look at.
Please.
It makes sense to you guys, yes?
Well, I'll just speak up and say, I've been presenting this to staff the last week or so. Most of the questions I've gotten don't have answers yet because most people want to know, well, what's the timeline for this? When are you going to start? Where am I going to sit while you're doing construction? Or what are the details of the furniture and things like that? So I haven't really gotten a lot of, this makes no sense to me, or I don't understand what's happening here. It's more, they have detailed questions that can't be answered yet. But yeah, definite enthusiasm for the restroom remodel and the staff lounge area, and just having those additional small meeting rooms is a definite bonus. And I think separating the departments a little bit while still keeping them connected. For example, right now, CME actually has staff that works down the hall as well as staff that works in the LE area. So bringing them all together, but also putting them adjacent to other teams that they work closely with. I think staff can see the advantages of that. You were at my presentation.
Susie, you were going to say?
Yeah, I echo what Laura said, I think it makes a lot of sense. I used to work in Nexus and bringing the materials all the way down to the opposite, the furthest point in the entire library didn't really make much sense. I mean, I no longer work there, but I think that they really would appreciate that, the new layout. I love the collaborative spaces, the personal offices, but also the shared spaces where people can make calls and small meetings or just do the staff training. We have a lot of lack of that right now. So I think it's going to be great. I think people are going to love it. I mean, I speak for myself. I really think it's going to bring us in a great direction. I don't know if anybody else thinks that, but that's my interpretation.
I'll just say I went through an office remodel at my company a couple years ago, and we struggled with a lot of the same things that are being talked about here. And we added what we're calling like breakout rooms, where it's small, where you can maybe have 1 or 2 people. But it's been great for me as a manager, where if I have to meet with an employee and have a confidential conversation, I can do that. If somebody needs to make a phone call, you're not going into a big, huge conference room that's got 12 seats and it's not taking up space for other people. And people were very, very happy with the results. We did ask for a shower. We did not get one in our remodel. So I'm happy to see that is here. And I think keeping mothers also in mind too with the space for privacy is really important. So I'm glad to see that that's part of this as well. So I think it looks really good. I think the main question I have is I think a lot of the conversation is going on. These are the needs that we're seeing now. But I guess I'm curious if you guys have talked about maybe historical shifts that have happened with the staff, and then maybe projecting out 5 years from now and 10 years from now, and like how adaptable this space will be. Like just thinking about how technology changes at the library, for example, do you envision your IT staff getting larger? And if so, is this space easily reconfigurable to make sure that those needs can be met 5 years from now? So like you're not having to spend a lot of money later on to do that. I think making sure that the space can continue to evolve and grow with the needs of the organization is really important.
That's a great question. I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. We were just talking this afternoon, Laura and some else, about what type of AV and tech equipment we would need in our meeting rooms.
Yes.
You know, like the way we even thought about it 2 years ago when we were planning for the major renovation project is different from how we think about the needs today. All that. So that's one thing. You know, I think we can kind of future-proof our rooms in a certain way by just making sure that the technology. But in terms of like kind of flexibility for the future, I don't know, Andrew and Alex, if you have different thoughts on this, but for me, like just the fact that we have these unassigned large spaces like M1, meeting room 1, M2, M4, and all these big group rooms in each work suite, office suite, like that's a lot of unassigned space that could, if needed in the future, turn into something else. Those are all collaborative, big rooms that are just going to be kind of an open box essentially for us. So that's kind of how I personally viewed it. But I don't know if we've really talked about this even further than that. Making sure this works for us in the future as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important issue. And well, for all the reasons that you mentioned, I think it's developing in the right direction. And I mean, just another kind of general concern that I have since the beginning and will have until we complete this is to make sure that there's the right balance between open, flexible space and enclosed, more defined space. And I think that having that right balance is part of what will allow the space to evolve with less friction going forward. So, you know, if people, for example, in LE, change the way they work together and the workstations that were provided in the center no longer really or the right configuration or method for people to work in the future, there's enough space there to imagine that it could be refurnished in different ways. And there's going to be enough flexibility by virtue of all the conference rooms that we're providing and enclosed rooms that those could also be converted to offices. Should those be, and you need more offices, or some of the offices could be converted to co-working or conference rooms, or be combined together to make larger spaces if that becomes more necessary. So I guess part of what I'm saying is a balance between open and flexible space and enclosed space is important. And then a kind of normative arrangement that isn't too specific to anything of the moment, and is therefore sort of more adaptable to an evolving future. These are also issues that get kind of worked through as we keep developing the project with AV, IT, furniture, and finishes going forward. It's not a concern that will be dropped after the master plan.
The thought about that is the furniture selection is going to be really important, because right now, if you've all seen for our workstations, our cubicles, desks and partitions, they are a bear to work with, and unassemble and disassemble and assemble and reconfigure. It's just like our building services department does a great job, but it takes a long time and a lot of effort. And we have certain limited pieces, so a lot of them don't even look right anymore because they've just been scavenged for parts and stuff. So when we pick this furniture, I'm certainly interested in finding furniture that's like has a lighter touch and can be reconfigured on the fly quickly, as opposed to like really like kind of like nailing everything into the floor and like living with that for 20 years.
So very modular.
Exactly.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, I think 20 years ago, they probably thought this furniture that we have is modular, but it's really, yeah, exactly. It's evolved, the furniture industry has evolved too. So.
And you mentioned the doorways between the three departments, and I think that is one piece that future-proofs a little bit. If departments were to combine, or all of a sudden one department got much bigger, there are ways in which we could use those spaces differently, whereas so separate that you can't fit anymore in those spaces.
That's a great point.
At the very top there, to the left and the right of the restrooms, there's open spaces that's for storage. What's the sign for that? Those three?
The one on the right of the women's restroom is storage for books that are no longer in the collection. And then the one on the left of the men's restroom is the mechanical, part of our mechanical room. To the left of that is a supplies closet, a large supplies closet.
So I have a question, and I don't know if this is something that might already, be fine in the plan that it is, but with all the discussion of departments working together, I think it's interesting, and I don't know if this is something that could be changed or not, or maybe it might not be worth it, but I just thought I'd throw it out there that, possibly having some of these meeting rooms that are within both of those, kind of next to each other. If we look between like the YS and the CME, having entrances on both sides of those almost. I don't know if that's a thought, but something where there's a shared space between the departments, would help really with some of that collaboration, just access to one another in those meeting spaces.
Andrew, Alex, if you have any comment about that, or
absolutely. I think everything we can do to create the both and condition, where it can be used by both departments, it can be both kind of shared space or a private space. We want to seize every opportunity, and I think that room in between YS and CME is a good example. And I don't know if we shared it with you, when Richard and Laura, but we had one version of this where it was exactly as just described, that you could enter into both, from both departments into the room. So these are decisions that are going to be revisited and kind of fleshed out in more detail. But I think it's a really important point to maximize the adjacencies, the adaptability, the kind of feeling of permeability and sharing everywhere.
Thank you.
The inclusion of the meeting rooms along the hallway, M4, M2, those kinds of rooms are supposed to also help foster the cross-pollination between departments.
Brought to the windows, but then I think I heard Andrew say that the vast majority of people didn't actually want that. So I'm kind of curious why?
I think that for each department, it was a different reason probably, but each department had like a wish list of all the types of additional like spaces that they wanted in addition to like just their desks and offices. And with the inverted version, we lost some of those spaces. This would actually give us, each department was just like, yeah, I have everything that I asked for, like right here, you know, and just turned out that way. And also, I think I mentioned this in my director's report that by retaining, using as much as that exists as possible, you know, I'm hoping that the cost estimate pleased with as opposed to you know disappointed with. So
Right.
exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Less need for hardware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, any last questions, comments?
Thank you so much for taking your time to do this, Andrew. I know we've worked with you before, but this is really, you know, I like how you spent a lot of time with the staff to hear them, to address their concerns and the needs and kind of how this is all going to be, you know, reflective of the future of the Skokie Public Library and how, you know, I really believe that collaboration, what we are using and utilizing these spaces for on the lower floors, we want to really be reflecting that and that kind of workspace and productivity and creativity, you know, in our employees as well as our staff. So I think this is really, you know, thank you for this because you can tell this is very thoughtfully put together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Brilliant as always, thank you.
hear that? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Richard, do you need anything?
Thank you. Good to
Thank
see
you.
you all.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah. I know.
All right, now gets us to page 15.
Are we on bills yet?
70 something, what's that?
Are we on bills yet? We're not
We're
consent agenda?
we're almost,
We're on the bill.
almost there. So, are people okay? You want to keep going or do you want to take a break?
I'm fine, so keep going.
Fine.
Okay, so go to
It does get
page
chilly.
15. Does approve, we need to approve this?
Yes, it's a disbursement.
So, starting on page 15 through 24, all the disbursement fees and bills.
I have a few questions
Sure.
about bills, yeah. Okay, so, we're at obviously, we've done a renovation, we just completed the roof. So I'm curious about things like, plumbing cost here.
Yeah, that's a replacement of a water heater.
Okay,
So that's on the building review list of things that we wanted to take care of in the next
right.
years.
That's part
But
of that.
Andy, our new building services manager, took a look at it and saw some things that concerned him, and he said, you know, better just replace this.
Problem with anything.
I think if we didn't take care of it, it could have been a problem, so he wanted to take. We would have had to replace it in the next couple of years anyway.
in category, 37381. Beulah.
We bought some, that's the company we buy a lot of like, maintenance products and equipment from, and that's, that much money because we bought two kind of commercial industrial size vacuum cleaners. Before, our staff were using just like kind of the ones you would use at home, and we looked at that and said, this is not smart for us to use these. And I said, you're absolutely right, and so we just bought some appropriate vacuum cleaners for a size building such as ours.
Okay. Also an item about door company, Raynor.
We had a problem with our garage for the bookmobile. Very short, the door wouldn't open and close properly, and so we had to have that fixed. And that it's a actually during the process I learned that it's a recurring problem after a certain, because the lifespan of a coil or spring breaks every many years or whatever, and so what we're doing now is actually we're planning to replace the entire door so that we can have a more reliable door, so we don't have to keep repairing the door every few years. So something that was unexpected, that we just that's why also why the bookmobiles, part of the picture of why some of the surplus down in the bookmobile recently, because the bookmobile wasn't able to touch, and so plus we had some battery issues, which is maintenance of auto, $6,000. We had to replace all the batteries on the bookmobiles. It's getting to that age where we're going to start seeing more.
Right.
How old is the bookmobile?
It's 5 years. 2016.
How often is it typically replaced?
The entire bookmobile, the lifespan of a bookmobile is about, you can say like 15 to 20 years, 18 years typically, and we have a lot of years left. And our bookmobile in general is in very good condition, and we do regular maintenance. But just it's like a car. After 60,000 miles, you're going to have to replace some things.
Thank you.
Richard, also 6020 professional services.
Yes.
Niles Township Property Tax Appeal. Can you explain what?
I can try, but like to probably give you a better explanation.
Yeah.
This is a regular bill for us actually, and
It's an annual bill, and what they do is, well, we're with the school districts and the park district and everybody else.
Right.
So it tries to help, if there is a property tax appeal, that if the lawyers are involved and this whole co-op is working together, it helps to mitigate our cost, or the cost to us of them getting a tax appeal. Their taxes reduced. So these are the expenses for the lawyers' fees and all the other things for a whole year for us.
So when citizens file appeals?
Both businesses and citizens,
And
but the
businesses.
biggest hit is when Lord Taylor is gone now, but Nordstrom's or Lifetime Fitness, I think, does, every 3 years, they'll appeal their
Right.
property tax. Well, they'll
I
appeal the
didn't know
property.
that these respond to that individually. I guess I thought Skokie would have done that on the municipal level. But you're saying there's a co-op.
Because the taxing districts in Skokie are so split up.
Right.
If every school district took it upon themselves to respond to the same bill, then it would cost us like 6 or 7 times the amount of money. So that's why we have a co-op so that whenever it's, I think we must be so unique as a community for this to happen, because I think other communities, that they have a unified school district, a library, and a park district, it's like very easy and clean. And for us, depending on where the business is located, it could be us, a school district, and the park district.
Well, here's the thing, it's always us and a park district, but it's different school districts.
Right.
And the reason, and I get a bill that's like 20 pages long because of the different people that are trying appeals and the different legal fees and everything. And they listed all out And like, our $25 fee and our $50 fee, and they list it out for everyone that's appealing. But we're in different categories with, and some of them aren't us at all.
So
So,
depending on the year, they'll calculate, correct me if I'm wrong about this, they'll calculate the lawyer's time on matters related to us versus,
Oh, yeah.
everyone else, so we're not being charged for things that aren't related to
they
scope of public
They
library.
prorate. So every time there's a bill, $1,000 bill, if we're 5%, we're paying 5% of that. Every single legal fee that they have is prorated to what the library's interest is in that particular piece of property. And the money that we do save, when they do, instead of going before the court and they do a consolidation, when they settle, I've actually looked at it to see, we're paying $3,000 and how much we would have lost more in property taxes. It's well worth us being a
It's
part
so
of
much
this.
more, yeah.
Of course.
Other questions about the bills? All right, I think, Bob,
I'm sorry, I had trouble finding. On 37405, is that new?
Section is
It's under maintenance of buildings and grounds. And it's the canine detection and inspection services.
That's related to pest control. Pest control.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we have, canines come out and inspect certain areas if we want to check to see if we have any.
Any possums?
No, not those kind of pests.
What do they detect?
We specifically, if we ever have a concern about a possible bed bug sighting, we'll hire a canine to come out or service to come out and make sure that an area is clear. So, and we also treat the areas too, so it's like a double. Canine detection is very much more reliable than human. Just for the record, we don't.
May I have your
have any
attention, please?
concerns
The Skokie Public Library.
I want to make that clear. No, that's why it's very.
Public statement, there you go.
I was waiting on you, Richard.
Materials that we
As
checked
it
out
should.
before we close. Thank you.
all right, any other questions about the bills? No. Payments? Very good. Bottom line, last line of page 19, grand total of all bills is $1,090,094.94 for this month. I have a motion to approve the bills. Payments.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, since it's money, we have to vote. Karen?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Say yes, Mary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
That passes 5-0. Thank you. And now page 24, year-to-date budget status. This doesn't need votes, but Richard, you wanna?
I'm happy to answer any questions. It's just an update on what we normally see each month. I think we're doing fine overall. There are certain lines where we might be going under or all. If you look at the sub, 32% of the budget, remaining with 25%.
Just go on to page 25 then, since it's similar.
Yeah, this is, so when the 9-month point hits, we provide a balance sheet for the 9 months ending in January, just to give the board, as we get closer and closer to the closeout of the fiscal year, you'll get a 9-month, 10-month, 11-month. And right now, we have a deficiency of expenditure. But that's because we haven't received our spring tax money yet. You can see in the second line there. Once we start getting our spring tax collections starting in March, projecting that we'll end with a good.
Questions about any of that, Richard?
Beth really puts all this together.
Yes,
so
thank you for credit. Good job. Right, then moving on to consent agenda, which have been listed all over page 26 through 56. Richard, anything you want to highlight?
Not really.
All the data, statistics?
Yeah, you see the quarterly dashboard. I think our staff are doing a great job just continuing to pursue our strategic goals of building. I just also want to highlight Devin's work, our data analyst. She puts together the quarterly dashboard, and for the years we really asked her to kind of write her analysis in addition to the numbers, and I always enjoy reading the dashboard. She pulls out just kind of insights that I won't be able to see on my own.
Questions?
I only had one question when I went through it, and I think you referenced it earlier. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Sure.
I noticed that the bookmobile circulations were lower. Is that specifically attributable to the garage and other issues, or do you think there's other issues at play as well?
It's so with the bookmobile, like we know for certain that there are certain issues, like there's the bookmobile garage issue. The bookmobile was also out of commission for quite a while, actually, because of the battery problem.
Okay.
When we get that fixed, we have to drive it to Wisconsin, run over the border and get it fixed, and then drive it back. So I think that scheduling that could always be part of it. Also, right now we're continuing to be very conservative in our approach to bookmobile services because of social distancing, and so it's not like everyone on board and just kind of crammed together. We're not doing that still. So the number of people who are visiting the bookmobile and making intentionally by us. The bookmobile has such a huge loyal fan base that I don't think any one of us is worried about people coming back.
I'd say that could be such a great social media campaign to really focus on the bookmobile and where's the bookmobile today, and get the community involved, that type of thing. I think especially when you're back in more action, to really boost usership of it.
Absolutely.
I think that would just be there's so many creative things you can do for marketing.
And I know we had some discussion about this in a recent board meeting about maybe putting some signage, permanent locations at the permanent stops to make sure that the neighborhood around that stop knows that there's a bookmobile. You aren't around, during that hour or whatever. And so I've shared that idea with Nancy and Carl in our community engagement office, and so they're also. Tanya and Santi came from Nels Township to have a conversation with us recently and started talking about the busiest times that the food pantry, which is Monday in the morning. Maybe at the food pantry on Monday morning. That's something where we kind of services there. We wouldn't get all the kids, but we could still get
like pit stops at schools and stuff. Like I was thinking, I remember the book fair was like the favorite day of the year at school when I was a kid, and I just think it'd be so magical for little, kids to go to the bookmobile and then they come home and then they go to the library. It's just
it is exactly that. We have so many great pictures and videos and stuff from. We definitely have a regular presence at schools. It's hard to get at every school, but we have like a criteria like consider how we should determine a big part of it is equity based, so we think about kind of accessibility to our bookmobile versus a library. Kinds of factors.
But in general, I love the report. I thought it was so cool. I was looking at everything. It was the first time seeing it. I was like, I love seeing how the different objectives of the library were written out and like all the KPIs and everything you guys are doing to measure against it. I thought it was really cool.
It's great to hear. Thank you.
The thing has been very important to us. Track that over time.
To clarify, read the bookmobile, there's one book,
Yes.
because we report adult bookmobile and.
No, yeah. Just adult bookmobile collection and you.
Right.
But it's all the same.
Yes, we only have one book. I didn't buy
Same
another
vehicle.
bookmobile like under, you know. like in
A mini
secret.
one would be so cute though, like, yeah.
Oh, we have, see,
The
the
bicycle
book-
now.
we do have a book bike
Yeah.
and it's
Okay,
it's terrific.
that's really
And
mini.
it goes out in the summer months.
It's like an ice cream cart.
Oh, so
It is so cute, yeah, and it's also wrapped with similar characters at the bookmobile, so it's like a sibling vehicle. But we have had discussions and requests from some staff about like a small transport vehicle for like stops to like, care centers or, childcare centers or kind of like not as big as a bookmobile, but not as small as a book bike. So if the board wants to have that conversation, well, I can definitely bring some information about
I think it's a cool idea. I think it's a good way to reach scope
I'd like to
and,
hear about that.
that.
I
Okay.
love a bookmobile on a cart. You know what I mean? Like a library on a cart, that would be
Yeah.
amazing for something that's, especially for some of our homebound or
Yes.
some of our
Yeah.
other patrons who couldn't typically utilize it.
It's amazing what libraries have done. Have you seen those Ford transport vehicles? They're like taller than a minivan.
Right.
There with like a little mini bookmark. Have you seen our book bike? Have you all seen it?
I have not seen a book bike, no.
Oh my gosh, okay.
It sounds magical.
Next time, yeah, we need
Wheel
to.
it in here.
I know, I'll write it up here. No, next time I'll try to bring some photos or we can actually go downstairs and take a look at it in person. It's great. It's really cute.
All right, do we need to vote on approving consent? agenda?
Yes.
All right,
yes.
Any other questions about consent?
I'm not sure if my question is, I have a community engagement question.
Sure.
Okay, just, I love the idea of postcards to new movers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Dolly Parton thing. I love that. And, my question is, how do you find out who are the
I can answer that. Just been working on that. Yeah.
Every 6 months, we work with a company called Unique Management, and they do address verification for us. That's why our library cards don't expire anymore, because we're checking addresses every 6 months. So they're letting us know who has moved out of
May I
Skokie.
have your attention, please? The Skokie Public Library will be closing in 3 minutes at 9 p.m. All library materials must be checked out before 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, so they let us know who's moved away and isn't eligible for a Skokie card anymore, who's moved within Skokie. But they are also able to provide us with a list of who's moved into Skokie as a new resident. And those are the people and the addresses that we send these to.
It's fantastic, brilliant that you found that. I think it's
And we're gonna
wonderful.
be collecting some information. We just started this, so we just sent them out for the first time, but we're gonna try and track. So how many of those people did come in then and get a card? And was there any activity on that card? So Devin's looking into what to do with that.
It's exciting, it's wonderful.
But kudos to the
I just think
board
it's
too. I think that idea came out of a board suggestion.
We were talking about the Dolly Parton Library.
Yeah, I think that's why. Like last summer or something, we started talking about it, right? And
Was it that?
Had this for a while, haven't we, Laura?
no,
We've been working with Unique on address verification for a while, but this is a new piece of it to get the new move and then for us to send something to them. So we just did that
With
for the
their
first
name
time.
on it. I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah.
yeah,
I just think it's
if that came out of a board comment, I feel.
All right, any other questions, comments, observations? Motion to approve the consent agenda. Second?
Second.
All right, and we don't need to vote individually on this, it doesn't involve pay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes 5-0. Thank you. Back to approving money. 57, the renewal of the IMRF. Richard, you want to explain? I know you wrote it up, but.
Yeah, it's basically, this is an annual thing that comes up for us. We have a software that helps us, facilitates basically our sharing with a number of, maybe 10 to 12 libraries, I believe. So it just facilitates kind of opening up the collection that is all of our collective collection to our patrons. So if you look at our catalog and search for something and you see search partner libraries, that's what you're using in each. So that we need this piece of software at this point to continue to offer that expanded collection to our patrons. Is used during the pandemic, early on, we wasn't used as much, but we're starting to, see. Now, I do want to say that I do realize this is not an insignificant amount of money, per year for a piece of software. I think it's worth it right now, but we are actively working on an alternative that is not ready for prime time, but we're working with Rails on what we want to see what it looks like if we have an alternative to English. We might choose to continue to stay with this if the price is right and
The public library is now closed. All library patrons must exit the building at this time. Thank you and good
We're trying
night.
to keep our options open and helping.
We're asking for a 3-year renewal here. Can we get out of that if Rails comes up with something?
Well, we've already looked at it at the Rails thing, and we know that it will take a few years. We have a 3-year game plan essentially, and at the end of years, our hope is that
Sure, we've asked this before. Are very fortunate. We have a very extensive collection, and many patrons from other libraries seek out our library for many. Asked before, and I'll ask it again. How much are our patrons having to actually go out to other libraries versus the other way around, where other library patrons are, using the service to get our resources.
we actually have that on page 33. Very bottom of page 33 in the board packet, it says Lincoln.
Yes.
That's what this consortium is. So you can see there where it says borrow versus lend. I mean, it's this is what it looks like, today, but I would say that we're actually getting quite a lot of value out of this. And the other libraries that are in the group are not all small little libraries with very collections. They're actually very large libraries as well. And can't buy everything, and neither can they, so it's kind of a benefit for resource share.
And this year, at least year to date, it's very balanced between what we borrow and what we lend.
Right.
There have been times in the past where we have lent out more, but it's really, both for interlibrary loan and Lincoln at this point, very balanced.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Good question.
I did have a question about it because I think, what would be, and I don't know if you've spoken to other libraries about it, like what would be typical? Because for us, it seems like ours is around 2,000 per year, right?
For 2000, what do you mean?
For the number of transactions, is that correct?
2000
Or is that per month?
You're talking about the 2000 reference in the
Yeah.
paragraph? Yeah, that's per month.
Per month.
It's definitely used by our patrons. It's not, if it wasn't, we wouldn't ask for renewal. But I understand, I'm trying to be diplomatic here, these products are from a company that has proprietary software. It's kind of a necessary, evil, if you want to call it that, for us to be in this system. Have a lot of alternatives. We are working on trying to manage our way at a much lesser cost to us. So, but the good news is that every year we get a per capita grant from the state, and this year was part of that money we used to pay for the entire bill for him. Not really. It's not part of our tax revenue from property taxes. It's, we pay for it with the grant rate. So.
I have another thank you. Thank you for the current newspaper link, because searching for it was a drag. And I love that you've added that. Trying to get to the newspapers, just have a link.
Oh, yeah, on our website, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, as to the InReach, other questions, comments?
I'm just curious, going back to 33.
That was for the year-to-year comparison, yeah.
Right, so we're saying 1,500 transactions a month. That's combined, borrowed and lent. That's what we're saying.
Maybe it's better to look at, where's the page 35, is it? That number was just for the month, year-to-year comparison. So we have a lot of different stats sheets because the board asked for like the month year-to-year comparison, year-to-date year-to-year comparison. So there's variations of that.
I mean, the reality is we're always looking at what is the return. Patrons are utilizing the service. My sense is help have used that service, so I think people enjoy it, obviously.
Definitely,
yeah, so it's, so I hear what you're saying about the development of a possible alternative, and
it
this is what it is for now.
also helps us because if we get a request for a book,
Yes.
Rather than, and Susie knows this because she used to do this work at, rather than go to one individual class, we take the time to, it's a time consuming task to like ask another library to do it. Mail it to us. Like this service through Lincoln is, we benefit by the Rails delivery system. So we don't have any extra delivery costs. It's a software and it's all done by patrons, and so it's automated, it's in their account.
Right.
There's really a light touch from the staff point of view. So we didn't have this and we would be trying to get fulfillment of all these requests that people have. It would take us a lot of staff and delivery costs, mail postage costs.
More time and resources.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Other questions, comments regarding InReach? Bottom of page 57, Richard's requesting the board approve 3-year renewal for $29,854.90.
In the first, that's in the first contract.
The first contract year, along with the prorated fees, $77,211.33. So what's the total?
The total for the 3 years plus the prorated amount for the next 3 months is $99,947.36. I'm sorry, it's not mentioned in the memo, but I calculated it before the meeting. Knew it was gonna be yes.
Could you repeat that, please?
$99,947.36. You can see it broken up on page 60.
So if we want to approve it, we need a motion to approve 3-year renewal at $99,947.36. Second?
I'll second it.
All right, and since it's money, we have to vote separately. Michelle?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Maureen?
Yes.
All right, 5-0 yes. Staying with tech stuff, you want to move on, Richard?
Sure. Page 61 is the approval of the renewal of maintenance agreement for ILS. The ILS that we use is called Sierra. It's from the same company. And ILS stands for Integrated Library System. In very simple terms, it's like the backbone software for everything that we do, whether it's patron records and checkout and circulation, or our cataloging, our materials are all in there. So it's all tied together. This is really, honestly, this is something that we can't function without. So I asked for board approval for the maintenance agreement. $1,499.47 over the course of 3 years. And there's also a backup maintenance charge of $147 that was handled differently prior and
To 216.
yes, yes.
All right, so if you look at the last paragraph of page 61, there's 2 numbers there. To the 216 and the 147. So questions about this? Comments? Not does someone want to make a motion to approve $216,499.47 for the 3-year period, as well as the $147.49 for the backup maintenance? Second? Very second. All right. Again, it's so we have to vote individually. Kara?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Say yes. Mary?
Yep. Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And that's approved 5-0. Thank you. To the elevator upgrades,
Yes.
67.
So this is, just to be clear, this isn't actually the cost of the elevator upgrades. It's for the consulting services that I would like to make sure that the project is handled without any complications or kind of, it's so similar to how actually Tom, we hired him to oversee the entire roofing project because we didn't have the necessary. That's how I feel about the elevator upgrades. Don't want to mess around. Talked to Shell's McNutt, and they said that they would be able to manage from the assessment and kind of analysis to the bidding process and the oversight of the actual work. $1,980. They would bid out all 3 possible upgrades. If the board chose to take on all 3, then we would add another $2,200 to the entire cost because they would have additional work to do by managing that 3rd project. If the board decided that the bid numbers were such that we only wanted to take on the immediate 2 projects that we feel like are necessary today, and postpone the 3rd project till next year or the year after, we could do that, and the cost would $11,980.
That collection bids.
We won't know
We're not
that
deciding
until-
tonight whether to do 2-year, 2 or 3.
Exactly. Once the bids are put out, they will bid out for all 3. And once the bids are received, then the board will they'll come up with a recommendation in conversation with me and bring a recommendation as we normally do to the board with the table of, what the bids look like and also what our recommendation. Then the board can decide to take on the 2 that we feel like are needed right away. Or that plus the 3rd upgrade, which we know we're gonna have to do at some point anyways.
Have a question.
Sure.
In the sense that, it's back to my question about, we just did this big project, to
Yes.
renovate everything,
Yeah.
make everything wonderful.
Yeah.
And then we had to do the roof. Now we gotta do the elevator.
Yes.
So my question is, do we have any projection on any of these other large ticket, absolutely must do kinds of projects, so that we're not lumping up, it's like.
Well, nice.
Like,
I don't like that question, so I'm
At least they're at a timer, we know.
No,
that's a good question, and I'll answer it. In the next part of the agenda, I have the update of the anticipated capital project, so that is my attempt to provide the immediate view, and then we have the building review from SMC, which provides a 10-year projection.
Okay.
It's not scientific, though. It's not like guaranteed, things just naturally come up. And the nature of facility and grounds this size, we're always gonna have projects. Like if you think about how the village and the schools work, every summer there's a major project, right? So it's probably gonna be like that, but I will say the roofing project, the 3rd floor project, once we're done with that, and the paving project, right? Not a lot of big stuff that I can think of,
You got the parking lot.
Well, the paving project, the roofing project is done. And then, if you look at the next agenda item, it kind of tapers.
Parking lot part of that.
We already took care of that about, I want to say, the LED lights in the parking lot and the driveway.
All right, but as to the consulting services for the elevator upgrades, questions about that? And again, Shales McNutt, since they've been involved in overseeing everything, we're not proposing getting it out because we're in the middle of working with them still.
Right, we're not required.
Right.
Right.
They have the expertise that you need. Yes.
Would go back to interviewing construction companies.
We have an excellent working relationship
Yes.
with them. So unless anybody has any questions, I motion.
I second.
For up to 14,180. All right,
Yes.
we have motion and a second. It's money, so Michelle,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
I'll say yes, Noreen,
Yes.
Mara,
Yes.
that passes 5. All right, next, just the update of the anticipated capital project, Noreen, just what you were asking about, this does not require a vote or approval, just for our informational purposes. Richard, what else do you want to?
All right there, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but I mentioned this to Mary in our orientation. The board wisely, I think, asked for these 6-month updates to time up with the lead up to both the operating budget approval in April and the tax levy approval later in the fall. So that's why we do it in this 6-month window. So
Very helpful, Richard, thank you.
Yep.
Then I'm gonna jump to item 73, the rails report. Questions, comments about rails report?
Another excellent report.
Everything
Shebna?
you wanted to know.
yeah.
Then, Projected budget is on the agenda, but it's not here on our. Talk about it in closed session?
No,
Yeah, that's
yeah, I think we should talk about it in open. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them or try to answer them. Just keep in mind that it's a first look at the budget. I'm trying to provide kind of a, usually the first look is when I provide the most narrative about or explanation about what the budget will entail and why the changes are there, you know, but if there has any questions about anything, I'm happy to try to answer. Life is here too, so I'll with that. If not, the board will see the budget again next month, and then April, when we'll ask the board to approve a budget. You can always email me and call me too. I know the budget is, you know, something that you have questions on later on or whatever.
Pretty clear on that. We'll do comments from, about going into closed, so comments from trustees, they want to make. I just had one, Richard, you mentioned briefly, Governor Pritzker is about to change the mask policy. How the library will follow whatever.
Yeah, right now, other than he mentioned in his comments about another topic, you know, that he's planning to fix certain locations, not schools, he mentioned, but in everywhere else. I'm assuming whether or not that's gonna have some kind of like you know, nuanced guidance from the state about like how we should all implement that, or whether it's just gonna be kind of like a blunt stop, you know, like, I don't know. So we're gonna keep our eyes and ears open. We'll continue to ask for guidance from our local village health department. We're very lucky to have a local health department.
Yeah.
They always pick up the phone and they always answer my email, so I'm glad. And so we can ask them for guidance. And so, you know, we'll just have to see what feels right based on the guidance from local health officials. We always try to just listen to the health officials on this stuff. So masks aren't required, but we still recommend that you have them for, say, like indoor programs or gatherings or readings, like different, you know, we'll
The CDC director today acknowledged this new trend in the country and made a point of saying, we're not out of this yet.
right.
She talked about the hospitalization rates and the death rate still, so.
Our numbers area are going up. A friend of mine who works with it is saying they're starting to see numbers again.
Well, and that's why right now these are required in libraries in Illinois under the law, but that's where the governor said that that's going to change at the end of February.
But we have ability to autonomy, obviously, over our building, and we can set rules that are different from the backup mandates, you know, and that's why I think if we talk to our local health officials, they know what's going on. You know,
You'll let us know
yeah.
whatever.
I'll definitely inform the board that can change.
Pretty imminent, actually.
It's over the next, in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
February 20th.
Right, exactly, like another
So
couple of
we have a few weeks. So I'm sure everyone is scrambling to figure out. what
Yes,
this
and
means for them.
clarifications. So we'll let you know.
Yep.
Any other comments from trustees?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for the onboarding and just for how nice everyone has been, and I really appreciate Richard and Susie, and everyone just throughout the interview process. So thank you. You feel very welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
We're smiling underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day you'll know what we all look like.
I know. No one knows what it looks like.
Oh.
We have
a directory,
an internet directory, but
that works. Only because, I come in the library and people know me. I don't know them, and I want to be able to call them by name and know who they are and remember it, which I don't.
think we
I
can
don't
get,
remember my name.
we take, we have an in-house photographer and we take, nice photos of everyone when they start, and so we can assemble a very simple directory for the board.
That would be great.
Just put on the.
Yeah, we can put on your Dropbox.
Yeah, it's fun. It doesn't have to be.
Absolutely, that's nice of you to.
Yeah, no, that's great.
You'll be able to tell the difference between the pictures I take with my cell phone and the ones that Megan, the professional ones that Megan takes.
I'm sure they're great,
And there is photo, I don't know if it's up yet, but I'm sure they're working on it for the East Lobby board. So
Yeah, we took
it's
it.
nice because we've been missing a spot there.
She was kind enough to Photoshop out the mask creases I had after I took it off before the picture. It looks like I had these horrible like lines on my face. I was like, yeah. So yeah, it was great. I'm excited.
All right, other comments? So need a motion to go out of open meeting. Yeah, correct? Two separate motions? Can be done as one.
Just a motion to go into close.
Just,
Yeah.
you don't have to go out.
Well, once we're in close, we need the motion
And
to
it's
close the
two
session and go back into.
All right, so can I have a motion to go into closed session? No motion. Can I have a
Do we say
second?
what the purpose is?
Yeah, it says here for collective negotiating matters on the agenda.
Yes. Closed session, motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C2 of the Open Meetings Act collective negotiating matters. Vera has moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Just by show of hands, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye, 5-0, it passes. All right, we are now
Hold on, in the Chicago way.
closed session, yes. So let's